Hey, finally here making a YouTube video, man. Here we go. Today we're going to be talking about causes of World War One. Obviously, I love this picture. I mean, the destruction mixed with the beauty of nature shining down upon the death that man hath wrought upon this earth. So there you can see a map there if you want some reference points there. You can see the Central Powers there in red. Yeep, yeep, yeep. Chilling, chilling, chilling. Well, not chilling, actually. Especially since later they put a blockade here that made them very hungry. But that's for another video. We're going to focus on causes today, but not before we look at this picture, which is really cool. It's kind of sad in a way. These guys are like military graduates from German school. Probably dead after the end of this war. But look how excited they were. Yeah, it's like this bro's got sword. He's got the strap pointed up. This dude's tooting a horn. Look at him go. All right, let's move on. But it wouldn't be a Mr. P special without some memes. It's an old meme, but it checks out. You guys remember the Area 51 raid? How we thought that was going to go? Anyway, pretty funny. Am I a joke to you? And this is another good one I like a lot. My sons love Peppa Pig. I don't see the allure of Peppa Pig, but they love it. So when I saw this meme, I thought it was really funny because Daddy Pig is got the 1,000-yard stare going on here. So anyway, moving on. Let's talk about causes. I like to look at causes for war like logs on a fire. It's a metaphor I use in class a lot. These wars don't, fires can't go on, unless you got some serious fuel, right? And these causes are the fuel. You had nationalism, you have imperialism, alliance system. I also like to look at imperialism in terms of just economics. All these sort of blend together as well. Militarism and the alliance system. All these things sort of lead to this war being able to happen, happening, and continuing to happen for a while. To all these sides, they thought it was a war of survival. It was a war of survival. So this is a meme. World War One is not an easy war to understand, especially in terms of the alliance system. Who shot first, who attacked who. There's a great page on Instagram, combat_combat history. Dude's great. He did a bunch of posts talking about some of the unique campaigns during this war because there's so many of them, especially initially before the major fronts develop this way and this way over here. So it's a complex war, but we're going to try to break it down for you guys to help you perform well on tests or just to understand why things happen and how we can stop them from happening again. So moving on, nationalism. All right. It's a touchy subject. A lot of people see this word and feel a certain type of way about it. They see it as a good thing. But a lot of people forget, like that Ramaswamy guy, that there's another word that's better called patriotism. Nothing wrong with being a patriot. All right, I'm a patriot. I love America. It's a great country. I mean, to me, it's the best country in the world. I'm not going to sit here and talk about it a lot, though. Do we have our shortcomings? Yeah, for sure. Can I talk about those shortcomings without fear of being arrested? Also, yes. So, anyway, moving on. How does nationalism end up causing World War One? Well, let's define it first, right? It's a bit toxic. Nationalism, especially comparing it to patriotism, it's like toxic. It's nationalism. Toxic patriotism, really. So it's this pride. It's pride, and it also has this ethnic aspect to it. Especially back then when many of these nations were specifically defined by their ethnic groups, the majority ethnic groups. This also allows for people to sort of look down on each other. I'm here covering this. Let's see if I can. Yeah, I'm a boomer. I don't know how to get rid of it, but it allows for you to like look down upon others, and you can't kill anybody unless you see yourself as better than them, or you're defending something, right? So it helps humans sort of frame conflict in a way that allows for them to inflict death upon people they've never met before. So moving on here, let's see here. So when we look at nationalism, and it really does tie into a lot of these other causes here, and I'm going to get into that. So the first example I'm going to talk about is the issue with Serbian nationalism vis-a-vis the Austro-Hungarian Empire. You may have heard of this little group called the Black Hand. All right. Looking at this flag, you got a lot of, you see this initial, I study terrorism, and this is one of the first waves of terrorism that is defined by David Rappaport is the basic leftist anarchist wave of terrorism in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Serbian nationalism here, you see this here, the use of poison to poison elites, stabbings. Their tactics were specifically targeted assassinations of government figures. That was their tactics back then. Terrorism has since evolved into this, how do we get in the news? How many innocent civilians can we kill? How much horror can we inflict so that their cause gets put on the news and everybody hears about it and talks about it? But back then, their focus was killing heads of state, killing representatives of government, trying to fracture the government, make the government seem ineffective, unable to protect their own leaders, et cetera, et cetera. So moving on, without the Black Hand's activities, especially with the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, none of this would have happened, right? At least not yet. Was the stage set? Yeah, it was. But this is the spark that sets that fire I was talking about, and it sets fire to the logs, right? So you can look at this as a spark, also as kindling, right? There's Austro-Hungarian Empire was an empire. They were in control of different ethnic groups, different language-speaking groups, and that's sort of what an empire is. You control other groups that are not part of the main group. So these ethnic tensions here, who wants to be controlled by somebody else? I don't. Nobody does. My sons don't like when I tell them no. Nobody likes to be controlled, especially by a foreigner, right? So these ethnic tensions lead to nationalistic cries for independence. This is sort of the flip side here, where it's bottom-up nationalism instead of top-down nationalism. They want to shrug off this colonial, power. And like I just said, there's nothing wrong with trying to control your own nation, wanting to be free, but this does lead to the assassination of Franz Ferdinand. And the Black Hand Terror Group is, the excellent example of this is the spark. This is how nationalism allowed for World War I to happen here. If they were patriots and they were like, what's happening is wrong, we got to figure out a way to get this done, but they, used more peaceful measures, maybe things would have been a little bit differently. It's also interesting to note that Franz Ferdinand, probably one of their better allies within the government of Austro-Hungary regarding the idea of Serbian independence or some degree of autonomy, some higher degree of autonomy there. Moving on. So there's a little bit of irony there. Franz was sort of I wouldn't say an ally, but he was kind of close to an ally there for them. So here's a meme. Don't go to Sarajevo. Yeah. So anyway, moving on. This I found out this morning. I was looking for like some funny pictures to put on here. I'm looking up Franz Ferdinand. This is from 1896. Dude went on a trip to Egypt, and this was a tourist attraction. He posed for this picture as if he was a pharaoh. Very funny. Just it's so weird to see people from back then also having like this sort of sense of humor we got, being a little bit silly. You don't see stuff like this very often, especially with heads of state. Moving on. So, all nationalism in Europe, though, it wasn't just the Serbians, right? If it wasn't for the Austro-Hungarians seeing themselves as superior, having this, almost a divine right to take over other groups because they're smaller, less powerful, right? Without that initial conquest, the Serbian nationalist movement wouldn't have had to do what they did, right? They would have had their autonomy. They would have had their whatever system of government they wanted. So, moving to the more great power competition at this time, the French, the English, the Germans, the Austro-Hungarians, they all sort of saw themselves as superior to the others. They certainly in their speeches would say things like, we're better than you, we're going to compete with you, especially in Africa, stuff like that. And that's another aspect of nationalism, right? Like this racial, ethnic aspect in colonization, which is what we're going to talk about next. Because it leads to competition. If I hate you, I don't like you. Like if I'm on the basketball court or if I'm playing football, I was a wrestler, you can't go out and do those mean things to the other person without, for a moment in your mind being like, I'm going to beat you. I'm better than you. I'm going to win. And there's nothing you can do about it. So in nation states, this competition evolves in a bunch of different ways. The first good example is just economic competitions. I mean, you can't have a military without money. You can't do things without money, right? And so they compete economically. How does this competition occur? Well, it's like the infinite money hack of the ancient world, dude. You take over a group that is weaker than you and you exploit them, right? I'm not Marx, but he's got a lot of interesting points there. So one really great example here we see is Africa. And this is something, an exercise I have my students do sometimes if we have time. It's a really interesting map. You can see that there is this one, enclave of independence here in Ethiopia. You can see the Italians, controlling Libya and the Somaliland, which they later would go back and try to get. You can see the French here. It looks like a lot, but this is the Sahara here, so not a lot going on right here. Algeria, later on there were more nationalist movements, stuff there. But looking at the exercise here, if I am rich, I'm the leader of a nation state, and I want to control more, I want to make more money, I want to protect my people, get more like goods and weird things, for like rubber, for example. There's all these wonderful things that you need to have a modernized industrial economy. Africa was, ripe for the picking. Not a lot of big nations there. Disparate, tons of different languages, easy ethnic groups to turn against each other. That's what the colonists did. They took over tons of land. I mean, if you know anything about history, you should know something about the Belgian Congo. I mean, in Europe, Belgium is sort of a speed bump for most nations. In Africa, they are like just the horrors that they inflicted in the Belgian Congo are just insane. I encourage you to Google Belgian Congo in your free time. But you can see that this would drive people to compete. There'd be skirmishes, trying to take a little extra bits of land, stuff like that. So this just adds to the level of conflict that led up to actual conflict in Europe. And of course, without the alliance system, this wouldn't have happened, right? You got teams, man. It's like they're playing kickball, they're picking teams, right? The Central Powers here, right? Middle. From their perspective, they feel surrounded automatically. Germany's always felt sort of in the middle, caught between Russia, caught between the French and the English. So they've always had this sort of defensive mindset. And here you see the Allied powers, Russia, at the time, France, well, I would say Russia for a little bit until, 1917-ish. But anyway, and eventually the US gets involved, of course. Saves the day in a way. But anyway. And this is a better way of looking at this. It's really funny to mention this, actually. I was reading a paper on the history of Homeland Security that was put out by the government, and they made a mistake of referring to these powers as actually the Axis powers. So remember, World War I, they're the central powers. They're in the middle, all right? When World War II comes out, it's the Axis, because you've got Japan, right? You have Italy, which really is not in the middle, really, of Europe. Well, I guess they kind of are, but anyway, moving on. This is a great picture. I've seen this picture on test before. It really does also help us understand why the alliance system ended up causing this massive horror in Europe. You got Serbia here. He's like, if you touch me, if you make a move, Austria's going to hit him because he did a naughty thing. He's a bad kid. Notice they draw him as a child, right? So Austria's larger. Boom, he's going to hit you. And hey, Russia's like, dude, that's my boy. You can't hit my boy. Bop. And then Germany's like, dude, if you hit him, I'm going to do this. And I mean, you guys can read. And then, of course, England in the background here. Hi there, if you don't. So without this alliance system, the war would not have gone as far as it is. And in terms of nationalism, how does nationalism affect the alliance system? Well, if I'm in an alliance with somebody, nationalism has a great deal to do with pride, with identity, how we see ourselves as individuals in the space of this history. Who are you in history? Who are you? Who are you? When you think of that question, I'm an American. I'm a teacher. We define ourselves by where we live, religion, ethnic, racial class, right? social class, our jobs, they define us, right? And so if our nation doesn't live up to its word and we go back on our word, what do you think that does to people's identities? Nothing good, nothing good. So there's this pride, this need to live up to our word, right? So that's a weird example of how, nationalism led to this issue with the alliance system popping off. We're going to talk about militarism now. This is a very popular cartoon on many tests, the EOC. I've seen it on the AP exam. And there's a lot going on in this image here, all right? You got this crazy looking monkey dude, right? Definitely not human, right? But let's look at the symbols, right? Anytime we see these cartoons, even if you have no idea what the context is, what do we see? What can we read? Simplify things. Is it a good thing going on or is it a bad thing going on? And that helps us edge towards understanding. So it says, destroy this mad brute, enlist. And so back then, mad sort of goes along with the English definition of it, like they're crazy. I mean, look at him, bro's got drool coming from his mouth. Let's get a zoomed in picture here. You got that crazy German mustache going on, kind of cool looking. But anyway, it says militarism on the helmet. He's got the pickelhaube. Bro's got bloody hands. He's got a bloody club. He's a barbarian. It's not a sword. It's not like, and it says culture, not culture. And then in the background here, you see this devastation, like these are destroyed buildings, right? There's a lake, or dare I say, the Atlantic Ocean here. You also see the lady here, right? She's covering her mouth. She's screaming. Her top is down. She's vulnerable, right? All through history, and it's a sensitive topic to talk about. But rape has been used and is still used as a weapon in war. It is horrible. It is awful. But here they're taking advantage of this fear. You got to protect your women. To encourage men to enlist. So the target audience here is obviously young men. They're encouraging them to enlist, right? So if we're doing document analysis for the AP stuff, I think that these visual documents are much easier to do than some of the, especially the older documents from the 1700s. Looking at more detail here, talked about all this already just now, actually, so I'm going to move on. Also sort of talked about this here. It's there. I talked about all this already, so I'm going to just keep moving here. So there's this, the militarism thing. We'll go ahead and define that in a second. For the sake of time, we're going to move on. The interesting thing here is the word culture, and it's a small detail, but there is a difference between culture and culture. You can't really see it here because of my big head, but it refers to productivity, industrial nature. Like there's this focus on physical military capabilities, being able to produce things, having industry, having successful industry. Moving on. So if you're a student, I would pause this and answer these questions in complete sentences. Always sort of mimic the way the question is written, especially if you're a bad writer. Nobody's good at everything. All right, so don't feel bad about yourself if you're a bad writer or you're a bad reader. The key is to just work hard and try to improve, try to be better. So answer these questions in complete sentences. Mimic the question in your answer to help your writing. For example, for number one, I would say the mad brute that I must destroy is blank. And you would fill in that blank with whatever you observe in this image here. The mad brute represents blank, right? So by taking the question, flipping it, and using it as a part of your sentence, it'll help improve your writing. And the more you practice this, the better you'll get at this. All right? Practice makes perfect, but the truth is, perfect practice makes perfect. So anyway, keep going, keep struggling. Without struggle, there's no progress, guys. So just keep your head on your shoulders, keep going, keep pushing forward. For Mama, for Papa, for the Kaiser Gott und Vaterland. And the kid is obviously down for that. So let's talk about militarism. That sort of going back to the meme, actually, if I can. Well, apparently I can't. Anyway, this really is, that was a meme about militarism there, right? For the God, for the king, for God, for the fatherland, right? So militarism is this ideology. Many philosophies, political philosophies, have this as an aspect of their philosophy. But militarism glorifies the military. It encourages arms races, like especially when you're looking at international power. What this does is this creates a security dilemma, right? And to talk more about this, I have this sort of terrible graphic. Let's pretend we have a neighbor, Bob. Bob's across the street. I say, hey, Bob, how you doing this morning? And Bob just looks at you, and he's like this. And you're like, okay, Bob, that's a little bit weird. And then you go to work, you come back, and you see Bob cleaning a gun on his porch, looking at you. And you pull in the driveway, you wave at him, and he goes like this. That's weird, bro. There's something going on here. So I'm afraid of this dude. He's got a gun. I don't. I'm going to buy a gun. All right? I'm going to sit on my front porch on the weekend and clean my gun and look at Bob. And my gun's bigger than his. Let's say that I got like just some crazy gun, right? And, he's like, oh, man, well, this guy is obviously, he's against me now. So I'm afraid of him. So I'm going to buy a bigger gun. Or I'm going to recruit somebody. Or I'm going to have my son or a brother or an uncle or somebody come to my house and with their gun too. Well, now there's 2 versus 1. I'm going to start bringing my family over here. So it's sort of like the Clampett, is it the Clampett family? What was it? I can't remember the name of that one. There was like in early American history, there was these 2 families that had this crazy feud, and their name is escaping me now. So if you can remember them, put them in the comments, please. I feel stupid when that happens. But this is a security dilemma, all right? This happens domestically, like at protests. If you go to a protest and you see guys with shields and clubs, you're going to start bringing shields and clubs. And this creates this, like, is that weapon there to protect you? Or is that an offensive weapon? Because it can be used to protect and attack, right? So this is a classic security dilemma. It also applies to the Cold War with arms races. If I see Russia launching nukes, right, and making the Tsar Bomba this huge test, right? Well, maybe we should make bigger bombs too, right? So there's security dilemmas happen all the time. So those are the causes. This meme. Those are some of the main causes of World War I. Here's some memes to tie this off. And then the next step is we get stopped by a valiant enemy. The whole front turns into a siege, and we lose an entire generation of young men in this disgusting slaughter of mud and blood. So really, really sad stuff. So anyway, another example of this, I forgot I had this on here, is this arms race between Germany and England vis-a-vis their navy. So here's some cool pictures of boats. I love navy boats, man. These things are so cool. Look at that. You can tell this is World War I as well. Like, you got this weird biplane dude floating around out there. So looking at this is sort of a document you might see on a test. You can tell that the first couple of years, England's pumping out dreadnoughts. And dreadnoughts are those huge battleships. Like, they're just ridiculously huge. The displacement on those vessels was just immense, the amount of water they displaced and how heavy they were. It's cool that they can float, but anyway, I'm not going to get into that. You can see Germany's lacking. They got 4 produced in this year. And then out of nowhere, Germany is like, bro, we need dreadnoughts now. And look at that. In a single year, they pump out 4. All right? If I'm England and I see that level of productivity, I'm going to feel a little bit, wow, maybe we should pump our thing. We're England, dude. We got to have the biggest navy. And so you can see just the trend here is Germany sort of caps themselves at this sort of level, right? And then you see that the British just, really ramp up production and are just pumping these things out like sausages, all right? So this is an example of an arms race. This is an example of militarism affecting policy, right? At the same time, there is this real fear, this real need to have a military, to have security. And so that's why it's a security dilemma. Are you building those weapons to protect yourself? Or are you building them to, go after us? And how do you know? Can you trust your enemy when they say, we're just being defensive, bro. Don't worry about it. It's fine. No, you've got to be suspicious, especially if your job as a leader is to protect your people. You have to assume the worst. And so it's just this issue with, civilizations in general, this fear of the other, the fear of them, right? More pictures of boats with big guns. These things are awesome. You can see the English sort of arms, the coat of arms back there on that flag. And then here's a final political cartoon I'm going to leave you with. The artist does some pretty interesting stuff here. You can see the dreadnought actually in England's back pocket here. America's off in the distance, chilling. It's hard to tell, but I think it's supposed to be a lake. It also looks like a fence. Anyway, Germany, huge sword, pistol, gun, big old helmet, right? What's in the bag, bro? What's in the bag? France, dual wielding, Russia. And it's kind of funny, but it's also sad. Turkey's sitting there like, we got swords, like we're here too. Anyway, and of course, we all know what ends up happening here, and this is the next video. We'll start talking about this stuff. So I hope this was useful, guys. This is my first YouTube video, so please leave some comments. If you haven't subscribed already, subscribe. I appreciate you guys, man. I never thought I'd have a page with like that many followers and stuff. It's weird, but I'm very proud of it, and I'm just very thankful for all of you. So anyway, I hope this helps. Check it out. I'll come up with another video sometime soon. I got students coming in any second now, so take it easy, y'all.